mediocre workout at the gym today, but a mediocre workout is better than no workout. In other news, I'm kind of over using the JD Firefly 2 is like my main gym headphones, for the specific reason that the actual size of the earbud, when I'm doing exercises where I'm laying on my back, the earbuds kind of fall out, even with my Comply foam tips. Did you know that in Vietnam, your religion is on your identification card? So according to the Vietnamese government, it's like 90% of the population is Buddhist. But the version of Buddhism that most Vietnamese people observe is not traditional Buddhism. It's 2/3 like Chinese folk religion, and then like a third what we would consider normal Buddhism. So you guys asked me to do an update on Gcam for the Poco F2 Pro, specifically that we now have a Gcam mod for the Poco F2 Pro that enables 4K 60 with EIS, which is more than the original application could do. That's only on the main sensor though. I rarely use the main sensor for doing video because the digital crop changes the field of view a lot. And it makes a wide angle camera not wide angle anymore. I'll have a demonstration of that in a little bit. We're gonna go head over to my little brother's barber shop. I'm gonna do a cool little cinematic video roll with the Poco F2 Pro. I'm also going to be selling my Redmi K20 Pro right now. And yeah, so let's go. Well, that went pretty bad. After trying to sell my Redmi K20 Pro, the guy who didn't like the price attacked me, and he broke my favorite Sony headphones. So, if you guys have other neckband style headphones that would fit under a helmet, let me know in the comment section down below. I'm fine, other than like a little scratch. But yeah, that's just kind of life in Vietnam, especially with foreigners. We're gonna eat lunch now, settle down a little bit, and then we're gonna shoot some cinematic B-roll with Gcam 4K 60 on the Poco F2 Pro. Okay guys, so I've been editing this footage from the Poco F2 Pro, the footage I shot at 4K 60. So the reason why everyone wants to shoot at 60 frames a second is two reasons, kind of. The first reason has to do with motion blur. Now, because cinema cameras and just cameras in general have been shooting at 24 frames a second for a long period of time, our eyes, we think of seeing some blur in fast-moving video as being more cinematic or being more natural looking. The reality is we were shooting 24 frames a second for a long time because it was cheaper to use for film. Now we're shooting at generally 30 or 60 frames a second. Shooting at 60 frames a second allows us to have a higher shutter speed of 120th of a shutter. So if we are shooting at 60 frames a second and we have to we only have 120th of a second to read that, then let's say we are shooting at a 600th of a second. There's less motion that's happening in between frames. I'm not the best person to explain it, but essentially there's less motion that we're missing out of it. When that gets compressed and goes online, unless you're blending those frames together, you don't really have the benefit of that. The second reason, which you guys saw a lot in this video, is that if we shoot at 60 frames a second, we can slow it down to 24 or 30 frames a second and give us some good slow motion. If we're sharing it on social media, it's going to be default to 1080, 30 or 1080, 24 frames a second. So the reality is that for 99% of consumption, which is not going to be cinematic video, it's going to be sharing on social media, we're not going to see a real quality difference, or we're not going to see the full potential for quality difference between 1080 60 or 4K 60 or 1080 30 even for that matter. In fact, if we're shooting at low light, it's better to shoot at a 24th of a second, or 24 frames a second at a 50th of a second, because that gives the camera more light and thus less noise. Now, to close this video out, I want to talk... Wait. Before I can close this video out, guys, check out this sunset. Oi, Zoy, oi! One thing I see that always frustrates me is I always see people on the comments like, oh bro, but did you know that you could... I don't know why I always default to doing an Indian accent for a commenter. It's just in my head, I assume that everyone that watches me is in India. Shout out to all my Indian viewers. People saying like, oh, but we get 4K 60 on one of the cameras and there's EIS and XYZ. But this is what the reality of it is, guys. If we're trying to stabilize video, the ultra wide angle lens is the best lens to do it on. The second thing is that electronic image stabilization is not the solution for having unstabilized video. It's a band-aid for the solution, because ultimately I could put this like video into the editing software that I use, and I could actually use stabilization in post-production and it would look pretty similar. Electronic image stabilization in camera is more of a convenience. On top of that, it doesn't matter to me if we have 4K 60 on one... It doesn't matter to me if we have 4K 60 on one of the cameras. Because if I'm trying to use this in a creative sense, as in more than social media, I'm going to try and match it from the ultra wide, from the normal, from the telephoto lens in some cases. So not having consistent stabilization is not that big of a deal to me. The same thing is that, like, this video is going to get posted on YouTube at 1080p. I'm probably not going to crop in on it. So what benefit did I get in all reality? Like, it's in my opinion, if we really care about video on phones, guys, we need to have a telephoto, an ultra wide, and a normal camera length. We need to have optical image stabilization on at least two of those three lenses. Otherwise, it's not that impressive. So I hope this was a good explanation of 4K 60, why it matters. I hope this was a good demonstration of 4K 60 with EIS through the Gcam app on the Poco F2 Pro. And until next time, guys, it's been Mitchell. Support me and let me know what kind of headphones I should buy next for my motorcycle headphones that are now broken in the comments section.